And I've lost my pen. That's cool. You pulled out the cord. He's a mess.
My favorite. Please keep all of this in. Please don't edit it.
I will. So we are here with Gillian, and you are the creator and interviewer and everything else for the Hamilcast.
Yes, that is accurate. That's how I describe it. Everything.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about that a little bit? Tell me how that was created.
Yeah, well, in January of 2016, let me back up a little bit. In October of 2015, I heard Hamilton for the first time. And my best friend, Ashley, who, if you listen to the show, she's on it, she introduced it to me. We were in a car on our way to see my husband, Mike, in a performance of Waiting for Godot. And we were stuck in traffic, and she was like, you have to hear this thing. And I said, okay, whatever. Like, I trust Ashley. We would listen to Rent all the time. So if Ashley says it's awesome, I'm listening to it. And I became obsessed and fell in love with it. And I was like, what is this? What is happening? And by December-ish, Bianca, who was my co-host, and Ashley and I had this group text, and we were constantly quoting Hamilton and talking about Hamilton. And I just thought, there should be a Hamilton podcast. There's not a Hamilton podcast. And I didn't know anything about podcasting. I knew about video editing and things like that, and I was pretty, computer savvy-ish. And I thought, I'm going to do a Hamilton podcast, and why not? I can figure it out. The first 2 episodes, Bianca and I were huddled over this camcorder that I have, sharing one mic. The first few episodes I can't even listen to because I'm sure they're so unedited and just a mess. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then, I texted Bianca and I said, hey, do you want to do this thing with me? And she said, yeah, sure. That was on a Tuesday. And by Saturday, our first episode was online. And I just dove right in.
Someone asked on Twitter, what is it like to have this podcast, you've obviously seen it from the beginning. So what's it like to have it now, so big, you've had so many people from Hamilton on it now, and you have so many listeners. What is it like to now, just breathe that in, I guess?
Well, yeah, it's crazy. And when I started the podcast, I hadn't seen the show yet. So I started it in January, and I didn't see the show until March, I believe it was. No, April. Whatever night Lynn won the Pulitzer, that was the night I saw Hamilton for the first time. And it was because of an incredibly generous listener who was like, I can't believe the creator of my favorite podcast hasn't seen the show that she's podcasting about, which was amazing. But it's crazy. I never thought, ideally I was like, maybe I'll get someone from the show one time. And the community that has formed around the podcast and the emails from people from all over the world saying that they don't have Hamil friends and now they do is the best thing ever. It's amazing to have these people like Andrew Chappelle and Javier Munoz and Lexi and Mandy in my living room, over there. It's insane. And I am surprised by something every day, a tweet, an email, something, and I don't know, but by every day. And I'm so grateful for this thing that just sort of came out of nowhere that I record on the floor in my living room, and now people are resonating. I couldn't have asked for anything more. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's very fun listening to the podcast, and they actually kind of kept me alive on a 26-hour train ride. No, we went to Chicago, and we were up there for 3 days, 4 days maybe. Saw Hamilton there, so that was fun. And that's when someone was talking about it at the stage door, and I was like, this Hamilcast thing.
Actually, in Chicago?
Yes. Someone was talking about it, and they were like, I was just listening to the podcast, and now I'm here. And what. And I was like, this Hamilcast.
That is insane.
Yeah, and I was like, this Hamilcast thing, I should look it up. So obviously I did. And then I was like, all right, we're going to listen to all of these. And that's when I started tweeting you guys, or tweeting you, I guess. And I was like, all right, Hamilcast is my new thing. So that's how I found you.
I love it. Thank you so much.
But anyway, let's talk about the podcast that you and your husband have.
It's not a podcast, it's a web series.
A web series, okay.
Yeah. It's called The Residuals, and yeah, it's awesome. Thank you for asking about that. Mike is my husband. He wrote and directed it. We have 2 seasons out. I edited it, and we both star in it, and it's based on our real life experiences as New York actors auditioning for commercials. and it's absurd. It's a comedy. All of our super talented and very attractive friends are in it. It was a comedy series. It was picked up by Broadway World, so season 2 lives on Broadway World, which was awesome. We were very excited about that. We have our very good friend Horatio Sands was a guest star in season 3 from Saturday Night Live. Jenna Lee Green from Wicked, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Our friends Mike Torpy and Emily Tarver, who are both in Orange is the New Black. And yeah, we just sort of, that was another thing where we were like kind of sick of waiting for something to happen. And Mike had this idea, and I said, yeah, write it, and I'll figure out how to edit. That was the first time I was like, I'll just do it. And that's how I learned how to edit, really, and figuring out like how to tell a story through editing instead of just little like 1-minute clips. And we dove into the deep end with that, and it's been really great. Mike is working on season 3 right now, and I don't know where it's gonna live or what exactly we're gonna do with it, but it's really good. So yeah, the Residuals.tv, check it out.
So now that you're kind of in this world of like podcasting and even that, what has it been like being able to meet, mostly in the Broadway community, meet people through this? Because I know that with this vlog that we're doing, we've met multiple people, and I listened to like your podcast you had with Anthony Rapp, which is really cool. What's it like to say, I mean, I guess you're not really like trying to gloat, but you're kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, like, I've met Anthony Rapp.
Yeah, well, no, yes, you're right. I'm not trying to gloat at all. That Anthony Rapp interview was a big deal, and that was recorded a week after, or 2 weeks after Seth Stewart, who was our first cast member from Hamilton, which was amazing. Seth was incredibly generous with his time. He gave me a time where he had to leave, and he kept looking at his phone. He's like, I could stay 10 more minutes, which was awesome. So, but then the Anthony Rapp thing happened, and, you know, Rent has been, you know, before Hamilton, there was Rent for a lot of people, and I was one of those people, and to have him on the show, and it was crazy because we Skyped with him because he was on tour with If Then. And the first time we tried to Skype with him, he was in a hotel that had so much construction going on that it sounded like there was 15 drills just around him in the room. And we tried like calling his landline, and we tried everything, and it just wasn't working. And it was completely fine. But he rescheduled. Like, he was like, no, call me back, let me try this, let me try that, and he stayed on the phone with us for like 25 minutes trying to figure out how to make it work, and then rescheduled. And it was hard for us to even find that first time, so it really meant a lot that he would do that for this little podcast about Hamilton. It's not even his show, it's just he's a fan too, and it was really cool that he tried really hard to make it work, and it was awesome. And then when I was at BroadwayCon, I got to see him face to face, and I was like, hey, Anthony, you did my podcast. And he was like, yeah, Gillian, how are you? And I was like, oh, I'm a dead person now I'm a ghost. So thank you so much, Anthony. How are you doing? Busy at BroadwayCon? Great.
Yeah. And what's it like getting to hear the actors in Hamilton who are like, you know, just all of these people in Hamilton? What's it like to hear their take on Hamilton himself and the musical with your podcast?
Yeah, it's really, really cool because the show is an onion, right? There's so many layers to it, and then everyone's story also has a lot of layers to it, and they all have a different history with whether, you know, it's Chris Jackson who hasn't been on the show yet. I see you, Chris. And but like, you know, Mandy and Javi, they have this connection through Heights. So their version of it is different than, you know, like Eliza Oman, or Hope and Draney, who are like young and fresh out of school, and Universal Swings, like they have a totally different perspective on it. But everyone, or Greg Haney with Bring It On, but everyone has the consistency is like how lucky we are to be alive right now, and the gratitude from their end, the excitement from their end, and the total like that their minds are blown all the time, just like the fans of the show are. Mm-hmm. So they are just like us in the way that they're like, I'm a fan of everyone. Like, they're fans of each other. They're fans of the show. Hi, Jax. And they are so aware of the magnitude of Hamilton and that they're in it. But I say that in the best way.
Yeah.
The awareness is like, oh my God, this is crazy, and they're just the loveliest people.
I know that since it is a podcast, people don't get to see your face.
Yeah.
But have you ever had like a fan moment, like a fun fan moment maybe?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. Well, every time everyone leaves, I'm just like, what? Like, did that even just happen? Like, there were so many times when Bianca was on the show where someone would leave and we would do, or like run to the bathroom and we would do silent, like, I can't believe that this is happening. But yeah, when Nick Walker was here, Washington and Burr and Mulligan on Broadway, he said something and it made me like contort and like just get really low, and I'm already on the floor. But he was saying how when you walk into the Rogers, like as a new cast member, one of the first things you hear is, you know, where to get the good pizza, and you have to do this Hamilton podcast. And I was like, what? This podcast? And he was like, yeah. And he said this beautiful thing about how to just own the fact that now the Hamilcast is part of what he called the Hamilton culture. And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Michael Lawai was saying something about the accessibility of, you know, because Hamilton isn't really accessible, and even though it's everywhere. And he was saying how the podcast really adds to that and gives this inside scoop and behind the scenes stuff. And, you know, I knew that in a way. You know, I get the emails and it's exactly what I want. When I hear behind the scenes stories, I'm like, oh yes, this is perfect. I want to know about it. Everyone wants to know. But for cast members to say that, and people that I look up to and admire and think are so talented and smart and creative, to say that is just, those are the ultimate fan moments for sure.
All right, so we've been talking a little bit about Hamilton, just a little bit. Let's talk about what you like about Hamilton. What are some aspects of Hamilton that you are just like, you were like, yes, like you just loved it?
Like besides, parts in the show?
Yes, besides like the whole show, because obviously the whole show is amazing.
Room Where It Happens, obviously. Yorktown is probably like the greatest thing ever. I love Yorktown. I love Hercules Mulligan. I have a very, I don't know, I feel like I have a bond with Lynn's version of Hercules Mulligan. And I love that whole thing about Yorktown. I think the music of it is so beautiful, and I think it's such a roller coaster. It's emotional, and it's just, it wants you to like, I mean, that song helped me through, I went through a kind of a roughish, kind of uncertain time last summer, and I was just like, I was feeling like a little angsty, and I don't know, but it was Yorktown, like on a loop. It was like, Yorktown is gonna, like, this is gonna be my jam, and it's gonna, if that song doesn't pump you up and make you realize, like, I got this, then I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, and the fact, just generally, the fact that it is such a well-oiled machine, and it's very specifically choreographed, and everything has its note, but the fact that it changes every day because of this constant revolving door of who's going to be on stage, and I think that is awesome. And a lot of people were really nervous about it when the original Broadway cast left, because I don't think anyone really experienced listening to something so much and having it in their head so much, and then this fear of like, that's not Leslie's voice, that's not, and no, it's not, but it's Gregory Trico's voice, it's Nick Walker's voice, it's someone else. I mean, it's like, and they're so good, and it's just, I think people have sort of gotten over it now, I hope. But in the beginning, I was saying, like, no, guys, like, this is awesome that you don't know who you're gonna get. Like, going to see the show and looking at that insert is like one of my favorite parts, because I'm like, who are we getting today? And they always bring different things to it. It's awesome.
We're gonna do like a couple quick questions. So if you could be any character in Hamilton, what would it be?
Aaron Burr.
And if you could be in any of the castings, being New York, Chicago, now they're having one in London and touring and whatever, which one would you be?
Broadway. Only because I'm a born and raised New Yorker, and when I was younger, you know, Broadway was my introduction to theater, and at least for my first run, and then I'll transfer to London or something just for the fun of it. But like, to start, Broadway, yeah.
Who do you want on the show?
Oh, How much time do you have? Lynn, Leslie, Chris Jackson, Renee. I'd love to talk to Oak, David, Alex Lacamoire, Andy Blankenbuehler. You know who I'd also love to talk about, or talk to, either Lynn's wife Vanessa or the spouse of someone that I've had on, because I would love to know what that's like from the other person in the relationship. It must be kind of insane to be married to someone or you know, in a relationship with someone who is in Hamilton, or like what that experience would be for them. I think that would be really interesting.
Besides Hamilton, show on Broadway that is your favorite right now?
I haven't seen it, but like most people, I'm just obsessed with Dear Evan Hansen and Sincerely Me. I get stuck in my head constantly.
Is this it?
Oh!
And it's got this cute little, is it here? It is. It's got this
Oh, come on!
little painting. I don't know who did that, but it's really
gonna say, who
cute.
did that? Oh, that's beautiful.
I'm in love with it. There's no signature. Oh, there is. Alana. That's all it says.
Kick ass, Alana. That's awesome.
Do you have a favorite theater? Like a favorite?
Other than the Richard Rodgers, the Nederlander, just because I spent a lot of time there seeing Rent with Ashley, rush tickets and standing room. Yeah, the Nederlander was the first theater where I felt like, yeah, I'm at the Nederlander again, like just like a total dummy. But it was a theater I spent a lot of time in, and I loved that whole Rent era of my life. So the Nederlander.
Through doing this podcast, what is something that you've taken from it?
To just dive into something that you want to do. I mean, I learned that from the Residuals, but this podcast is definitely, it is truly a look at where you are, look at where you started situation. And if people, I get a lot of emails about that, but just dive into it. I didn't have the equipment. I didn't know what to do, but I was like, I need to do this podcast. If you feel that drive, do it. Just do it. That's Nike. I'm sorry, but yeah, just do whatever you want to do and figure it out as you go along. Jump into the deep end and tread water until you figure it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this interview.
Hey,
Make sure you follow Gillian on all of her social media, which we will put down below. I think most of it's Gillian with a G.
Yeah, it's either Gillian with a G or the Hamilcast.
Yes.
Mostly the Hamilcast. I kind of gave up on everything else. Every once in a while, I'll post stuff about like my parents' dogs and things like that. But if you want to catch up on the Hamilcast or anything like that, it's always, everything is at the Hamilcast.
Yes, and we will put it all in the description link below. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for doing this.